Sure. Okay, data cleaning. This is the most fun you could have as a DBA. Database administrator.
That is one of the saddest things I've ever heard.
Remember how I was saying our data is spread out everywhere? Occasionally, often, companies will realize that I can't focus on my business and reassemble all this data. We had trying times over this period. We brought temps in. We outsourced some of it overseas. Now it's back or whatever. We can't even make the data match. It is amazing how many people have data that's about the same entity, but over here we call it ABC company, but over there we call it 1, 2, 3, 4. And then someone has to do it. Other things in your data is that we brought a temp in. And temps are the glue to keep the workforce working. But they don't know your data. And often the programs that they're using to key data in doesn't validate the data. It doesn't say that Ohio must be spelled O-H-I-O. It lets us type O-H-I-I-O. And of course that's an accident, but your data needs clean. Again, it's not that hard to do if you just think that way regularly. Securing your data, way more important now than ever, especially for the accountants in the room, anyone doing tax returns, anyone that involves financial data, healthcare data. The sad thing is most of our data is not secure. Did anyone receive notifications recently from your bank or from anyone else saying that someone had compromised? I hope they at least blamed Epsilon for it. But Epsilon is a big email service out there. I've never heard of them before. But apparently Capital One has, and they hired them, and everyone else. So we've all been getting notices lately saying that our data has been compromised. Now supposedly they only got our name and our email, which they could get from someone else. You know, the spammers seem to know my name and email. But it's hard for me to believe Capital One wouldn't give them something else that would make that mailing list useful. So we have to secure our data, but we have to actually trust everyone out there on the cloud, in Cloudville, to secure our data too. And you'll see that there's more and more focus on this. But everyone will have an agreement that they'll give you, and you need to really read the terms of the agreement. Okay, validating your data. Again, we have to make sure that we can't type a state that doesn't exist, or having someone type a customer record. Okay, these are our needs. And I'm big on this phrase, these are our duties. We must protect the integrity of the data. This is what Bob makes me say every day before I go on work.
I do.
Protect the availability of the data and protect the accuracy. A lot of it is common sense. But when we're busy doing our work, and a client's calling and there's a distraction, and maybe the computer's acting up or whatever, it's easy to lose track of the fact that our data is spread out and we need to keep an eye on it. So one thing that's useful to do is just make a simple little spreadsheet or a Word document. Just telling yourself where you keep your data. Okay, I keep my newsletter data in this application, I keep my tax data in that application, etc. And what you'll find out is probably in 4 to 5 places the data that we care about.
You know, one other thing to add to this is, and Doug touched on this briefly, is the circumstances where you have multiple players in an organization with different ideas of what this means. So, we have an organization, true story, that sold products and installed products. And the sale versus installation time would be different. You buy the product and then 90 days later it gets installed. You ask a simple question in this organization, let's say $50 million in sales, about 100 employees, all that kind of stuff. So it's a decent size, but it's not ridiculously large. How much did we sell last month? I don't know, let's go ask the sales manager. He's going to look at contracts. Total dollar amount of contracts signed during that calendar month. That's how much we sold. Okay, let's go ask the finance guys. Is how much product was installed, because that's when it goes over to receivables. Okay, let's go ask the advertising guys. It's based on the advertising, so it's how many sales were made for ads that were run that month. Okay, let's go ask the salesman. They'll double whatever the number was. But the point is, and actually there was like 3 others, the simple question of how much, you were talking about KPIs, what was our monthly sales? We've got the data there to answer that question. Unfortunately, we can answer it in any way people happen to feel like they should. And every one of them would go to a meeting with a number in their head. And then the discussions would not be on the same definition. So you could literally have someone go, well, you know, we had a 10% drop in sales last month. What are you talking about? We went 5% up. Oh, you guys are idiots. And in some cases that was actually true. No. And the problem is that when we talk about clean, secure, verification, all that, there's also the, let's get everybody on the same page as to what the heck this stuff is. What does it mean? And you'll notice that for a lot of this, we're not talking about technology.
No.
We're talking about people. The icky part of technology. I mean, the wonderful part of technology.
Exactly. The great news is, being small business, reining these types of things in is relatively easy. For example, it only took Bob telling me he's right for me to agree with his view of what sales are. And in a smaller company, we have the opportunity to do that. No matter what, it's never so big we can't get our arms around it.
But here's the other problem. We also take shortcuts. So we're going to use this definition because in the case of this conversation, when Doug and I talk about, here's the projects that's going to involve Doug over the next month. So those are the sales. Then when I talk with John and we talk overall, or I talk with Kevin and Steve, you know, specifically from their aspect, I may drop the sales term in a comfortable way for that conversation. So it's very easy for me to lose sight of that. So, cool. Turning data into information. This is I hate to say this. See, I find this one fun. You know, Doug's back defragmenting things and whatever, and having a fine time doing that. But this is where the company benefits from the data. And I want to be clear on the difference here. The company benefits from the application because the application is doing the business's, is helping the business do its core business. All right? But using the information helps us do it better. So we'll use Hattie's as an example. To just simply use the cash register and to track the sales, that's great because now we can take customers' money, we can, you know, in exchange for the product, and life goes on, and we're doing the business, the credit cards. Life is good. Our core business is great, but now we want to take a look at what they bought. We want to see if our soups are really good, if any soup is better than another. If they're, what is the swell that happens during lunch? Should we look to expand, you know, should we look to have some lunch specials from 12 to 2? You know, what, these kind of things, that's where this is. And this is where you really start to use your systems and use your data. Okay? And there's challenges to it. You know, it's dirty. You can't just assume that your system does it this way and that everyone's always added it this way. Oh yeah, it turns out we never really cared what soup people bought. We just added soup to the credit card. Should we have been keeping track of what soup? Because we serve 3 soups a day. I have no idea if they do or not, but they served it 3 different types of soup. Should we have kept track? Well, yeah, that would have been nice. But we never told anyone that they had to. It's overwhelming. Whack-a-mole. You know, because it's real easy to, especially if you get into with jerks like me. Yeah, but what about? How are you going to? Is that going to be accurate? Because don't you also have, and there's usually are, you know, for example, my questions with the aforementioned company were, okay, what if the customer has a change to their contract? that changes the financial amount in a different month, what month does that impact sales? Does it impact the, I see Frank's already thinking on this one. Yeah, you guys are both, yeah, who are the accountants here? But does that affect, you know, depending upon, and I'm okay with any answer, just have a definite answer. You know, things along those lines. And then the tools, and we'll get into the tools and we'll show those a little bit, but without knowing the tools, you don't know necessarily what you can do. Okay? And then there's the whole, tells us what we already know. Thank you, that's really freaking useful.
Unless it is actually confirming what we think we know, then it is truly useful.
And also, this way you've got a way to see if it changes. Baseline. If you know that our core sales are this particular product line, and it's always been, you know, 57%, between 55 and 60% of our sales have been this way, well then you know if over a period of months it's 60 to 65, 65 to 70, you're going to be able, humanly you might not notice the trend. But now from an information standpoint you will. And you can take advantage of that trend as opposed to be informed with it when it turns out you're not positioned to take advantage of what your customers want. Here's the tough one. It tells us what we don't want to know. Okay? Company worked with, spent a whole bunch of money putting up a telemarketing department. I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world. Because they didn't want to call new customers, they wanted to call existing customers, or people who they'd already seen who chose not to buy, like a month or two, or a few weeks after they met with the salesperson, and say, hey, have you reconsidered? I thought it was the dumbest thing in the world. But that was my assignment, so I set it up and got it populated and moving and all that kind of thing. First week, the scripts basically said, so I understand you had a meeting with our salesperson, you know, Johnny Muck and Floss, back on April 12th. How did that go? We found 30% of the people said he never showed. Now, to me, right then and there, that justified the whole system. Right there, just that. Now it's worthwhile because we're making money with 30% not happening. Boy, go to management with this, hey, this is fantastic, all that. They changed the script. So that it then became, so we understand that you had an interest. Now, to me, that's taking a look at information and shoving it back as data. Okay? Some companies don't want to know stuff. But it's really hard to totally ignore it when someone goes, hello. And then is that the information we really need? Is it something, you know, oh, that's how many left-handed people come to Hattie's. Good. Or, depending on.
Depends on where you're seating that.
It's a question or issue of value. You know. So.
I have a quick story that ties in a lot of these points. Years ago, at a large company, they had some bad debts. They were a manufacturer, and they had a spreadsheet that they were using to track the bad debts, and they wanted to prove that they were on top of things and that they were doing very good. So when I first met them, they told me that they have a 100% success rate with collections, and I was dumbfounded. It's like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. But what I found out, as I built the program for them, is that they didn't really have 100%. That was a perspective they had. So we worked out a flow of data that one of the divisions that they had would submit a claim to this department, and then this claim would be managed by the collection department. Okay? Well, it turned out that giving them that mechanism showed them that maybe $70,000 of sales were turned in as claims to be managed and collected upon. The system actually turned out to be very embarrassing for them, though, because they didn't have anything close to 100% collection rate. What they were doing in their spreadsheet was merely entering the few that they chose to give to Dun & Bradstreet, who then did the collection. So D&B was hitting 100%, but what they did in the spreadsheet and in their mind is ignore 99% of the supposed bad debts they have. So they looked at that 1% success, of course, because that looked good and you could write up a management report that way. But that was a real eye-opener for me. So again, Bob's talking about make sure we're all talking the same thing. Is it things we really don't need to know? Believe me, they did not want that report, that kind of stuff.